Good morning. If y'all listen up, Mr. Weldon is going to lead us in prayer this morning.
Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity we have to come and serve you today. Pray, God, that you'd have your will in all that we do. Give us wisdom beyond our experience, and bless each and every one of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Again, good morning. Everybody ready to go home? You're here. Our children okay? Good to be here, yeah. Hope so. Okay, on the wall. Chairman to the front. Brevity matters. Mr. Pruitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, I'm here today on House Bill 316. It's on the modified open rule list, fourth from the bottom. I'm reminding the committee, I don't know if I'm supposed to or not, that this is my second trip here, and I appreciate your indulgence. And last night I meant to look up the definition of vessel, but I went to sleep before I got to it, Mr. Chairman. But I'm sure that Chairman Lindsay could probably give us that definition if he would like today.
Ms. Pro Tem.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. Maybe you could clarify. Yes, I had a couple expressed just interest in what if a vessel, a boat, were sunk, you know, for criminal purposes, and now it's not being listed by the GBI. Can you address that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. The GBI would still be called in that type of investigation. At the current time, what it is that all the records and everything have to be kept by both entities, both the DNR and the GBI. And this really just relieves the GBI from having any records unless the DNR requests them to come in and be a part of the investigation, and in that time they would be engaged.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committees. I come today, it's a modified open, ninth from the top on page 2, House Bill 454. We're seeking to add information to the tax expenditure report, Mr. Chairman. Same bill we discussed yesterday, and answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two I'm asking for today. House Bill 271, which is a record restriction bill, cleans up some of the record restriction we did in criminal justice reform last year. Passed out of judiciary non-civil and actually passed out of full committee without even a question being asked at the hearing. So the defenders and prosecutors worked very well on this one to get a consensus on 271. House Bill 482 is a bill that it's on the second page that would allow corrections officers and parole officers to keep their service weapons as part of their retirement if they've completed 20 years of service. Public safety officers, DNR, and Department of Revenue officers already have those has that opportunity. This is bringing some consistency for corrections and parole.
What number was that?
482.
482. Short question, Mr. Weldon.
Mr. Chairman Neal.
Yes.
This HB 271, this is a bill that will protect those who are not convicted of allegations against them, correct?
Dismissed or no prost, and it doesn't take away the ability for law enforcement, courts, et cetera, to see those charges. It only restricts it from public view.
And this will restrict it from employer
Yes,
view.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. My bill's House Resolution 502. It's on the second page under Modified Open. I believe the last one on Modified Open, second page. This would call for a joint study commission to be appointed by the Speaker, the Governor, and Lieutenant Governor for mental health access and other purposes. I've worked very closely with Bill Riley in the Speaker's office and members of leadership in both parties to draft this resolution. This would allow us to find better ways to assess mental health folks before they reach crisis point in our state, something I think that's desperately needed in our state. I don't have the answers to that, but we can bring forward all the great experts in our state, in the House, Senate, and the Governor's appointees to make this happen. I would ask for your consideration putting this on the calendar.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I have two bills for your consideration today. The first is third from the bottom on page 1, House Bill 332. It would reconstitute the Georgia Board of Nursing to include the Board of Licensed Practical Nurses. This request comes at the joint request of both boards, which was unanimous by both boards and enjoys bipartisan support and enjoys the support of the chair of Health and Human Services. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that one.
Next bill.
House Bill 375 is an insurance department bill that will revise the cancellation period when policyholders are non-compliance of the contractual audit provisions. It will prevent fraud and help keep workers' compensation and general liability costs down in the state of Georgia. And again, that enjoys bipartisan support. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. No questions. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Today I bring you House Bill 389, the Georgia Health Insurance Enhancement Act of 2013. This bill is amending Title 33 of the Georgia Code as relating to insurance so as to sunset requirements to provide a conversion coverage. This bill will discontinue mandates previously required by the law. It allows the best options to be given to the consumer. It offers better coverage in the marketplace. Currently, the only option available to some people who have lost coverage were high-cost, limited benefit policies. These are referred to as conversion policies or high-risk assignment pool. These policies were originally designed to provide a safety net for individuals who leave employer groups and are not eligible for individual policies, usually due to pre-existing medical conditions. This bill sunsets these mandates because effective January 1st, new federal laws will require guarantee issue and access to individual coverage with portability and renewability. On this date, the marketplace will be open to all comers, regardless of their health. There will be no medical underwriting, and carriers cannot charge higher prices or refuse coverage to the sick. This program will be based on community ratings. However, there are a three-tiered based on ages, but not based on an individual's health care conditions. The bill requires notification by the carriers to those individuals currently covered by one of these policies. Notification will be sent out 3 months prior. I do have the department's endorsement on this, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 389.
Any questions? Mr. Hightower. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. If you'll turn to page 2 under modified structure, fifth one down, I bring before you HB 125. This is a bill that makes licensing requirements, expedites the process for getting your renewals for professional licenses. This bill has been supported by the Georgia Chamber, ACCG, NFIB, Georgia Realtors Association, and also the Architects Association of Georgia, among multiple other organizations.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Harden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring and ask for House Bill 268. It's on the first page under modified open rule. And this bill basically is a protection for our agricultural producers. In the agricultural economy system, the dealers who buy the products need to be bonded. This has always been a part of the law. This is really just an update of that bonding requirement to ensure that the producer doesn't get stuck. Basically, is what it amounts to. Many times, and we've had this happen, where a crop will be bought, purchased, and then the payment is not there. So this requires the dealers to be bonded. The dealers, the producers, everyone involved in updating this particular bill were involved and came to agreements on how this should happen. Also, we got a lot of help from Chairman Roberts and Chairman Burns, and because one section of this bill, the cotton payment cycle, if you will, is different from other payment cycles, but it has been well vetted and I believe is in good shape. Would be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank
Mr. Hitchens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Today I bring you two bills under modified structure, House Bill 365 and House Bill 366. They're both on page 3, about 2/3 of the way down the page. The first bill, House Bill 365, I asked for yesterday. It has to do with changing the definition of 15-passenger vans to passenger vehicles, and I don't know how much more explanation you want today. If I can certainly go into it all again.
No questions.
The second bill I'm carrying for the Peace Officers Standards and Training Council, and it has to do with two parts of their legislation. The first being discipline. About 2 years ago, the General Assembly passed a law which provided for the executive director of the Peace Officers Standards and Training Council to suspend the certification of a law enforcement officer who was indicted for a felony. The Post Council actually deals with 3 different types of enforcement officers. They have peace officers, who are those people that carry a badge and have arrest authority. They have communications officers, and they have jail officers. They would like to expand this authority so that the communications officers and jail officers would be covered if they're indicted for a felony. And the reason for this is they already have that authority in the council, but they meet quarterly for 1 day, so that it could be 3, 4, or 5 months after somebody's indicted before they could be removed from their position enforcing the law or carrying out public safety functions. The second part of the bill deals with training, and that there's 2 simple pieces in there that deal with in-service training. They're required each year to have 20 hours of in-service training. They specify that one of them has to be practical firearms and the other one has to be classroom instruction in use of deadly force, but it must be 20 hours of approved instruction. And this bill would change the first year's application in that if you go through 400 hours of initial training, you don't have to get your in-service training that first year in addition. And the year that you retire, you also don't get it. But the biggest part of it is that if you don't get that 20 hours, now that they've computerized it, it'll give the executive director the authority to suspend the certification of the peace officer if he doesn't get it in that year.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all see how brevity worked on that one? Ms. Clark, C-L-A-R-K.
Mr. Chairman and members of this committee, I bring for your consideration 2 education bills today. The first is House Bill 354, and it's on page 3, modified structured. This bill replaces the definition of daycare with child care and learning centers, and this conforms with industry standards. Also, it modifies a family daycare home to have 6 children for safety reasons, and it provides that the Department of Early Care and Learning administer programs that are transferred to them under the governor.
No questions. Next one.
The second is House Bill 131, and it is on page 2, 3rd from the bottom. This has to do with the HOPE grant. Students who take advanced placement classes have a bonus of a 0.5. This asks for the same consideration for students taking college classes under a college professor.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee and Mr. Chair.
Good, Dr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm bringing to you the first bill on your list under modified open, House Bill 36. Basically, this makes the red fish or red drum, changes it from game fish and commercial to game fish only. All the states in the southern region from Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and South Carolina have this status. Only 500 pounds of game fish were sold in the state of Georgia. All of the coastal delegation supports this bill, as does as I do. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Bruce.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I come to ask for House Bill 150, which is the 8th one down on the first page under modified open rule. And this bill is designed to protect the public from having their mugshot being taken down from a public site and put on a private site and then charging people to remove it even though they haven't been convicted of anything. That's all it does.
It's a good bill. Thank you. No questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the second page, under modified structure, House Bill 124, Sunday sales fix for local governments. And if you would permit me, also on the first page of your yellow sheet, House Bill 159, property tax bill.
Tell us about 124.
You'd like me to tell you about 124 again? Yes, sir.
124, you've been in timeout and everything else around here, so you might as well tell us how you fixed it.
Yes, sir. House Bill 124 provides that if a community has previously approved package sales on Sunday of beer and wine, that a subsequent referendum for distilled spirits by package on Sunday that happened to fail would not nullify the prior action for beer and wine. Further defines a retail package store as a business that has 75% of their sales in alcohol products.
No questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Nimmer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you for your consideration House Bill 276. This is the reauthorization of the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund.
Wait a sec.
Page 3, number 6, down from the top.
Any questions? No questions.
Mr. Chairman, I also have a bill on your yellow sheet, if I may ask for it as well.
You can.
House Bill 359, it's at the top of page 3. This is dealing with the transfer of funds from the Department of Revenue to the general fund under the discretion of the Commissioner of Department of Revenue. House Bill 359.
Anything else?
That's it. No, sir. I appreciate your hospitality.
I'm just glad to have you in here.
Sure you are.
Mr. Hatchett, or is, oh wait. I didn't know where his evil twin was in here or not.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. He's probably still asleep. HB 381 is the second one down on page 2. It simply adds 3 non-voting members to the Department of Natural Resources Foundation that are also members of the Department of Natural Resources Board to provide synergies between the two committees.
Any questions? Thank you.
I'm going to timeout now.
Go wake him up. He's probably got a rules meeting over there sometime today. We are passing bills out over here. Are they? Okay. Mr. Harbin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 256, it's on modified open. It's the one that just defines cigar wraps, and it puts it into the tobacco code so that minors cannot purchase these products.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Atwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I have a resolution and also a House Bill. House Bill 458. It's on the second page, about a third of the way down. And essentially what this does, Mr. Chairman, it has essentially a one-word change. It increases the deductible cap for condominium association insurance policies from $2,500 to $5,000, and that's all. In the current marketplace, it's virtually impossible for a condominium association to obtain an insurance policy with a $2,500 deductible, and these policies often begin at a deductible of $10,000 or higher, and accordingly, therefore, at the time of the loss, the association is forced to pay any deductible amount above that. The cost is passed on to the individual condo owners often, and this corrects that.
What's the resolution?
The resolution, Mr. Chairman, is on page 3, literally at the bottom. House Resolution 389, and essentially what this does is it's an urging resolution of our congressional delegation. Beginning in 2014, the health reform law imposed a new sales tax on health insurance. That will increase the cost of health coverage. The amount of the tax will be about $8 billion in 2014, increased to $14.3 billion in 2018, and it's going to have a principal effect on Georgia, and it's urging our congressional delegation to move toward repealing or correcting this.
It's a good idea. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 104, it's on page 2, under modified structure rule, third one down. Mr. Chairman, this is the annual vehicle tag bill from the Motor Vehicles Committee. It basically makes the Appalachian Trail bill a Appalachian Trail tag, a revenue sharing tag. It creates an Atlanta Braves Foundation tag, and it has cleanup language in regard to veteran plates and the plates for Aid Atlanta.
Questions?
I have a second one as well, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Page 3, fifth one down, it's called HB 240. This bill would allow clinical fellows who are seeking their full speech language pathologist accreditation, who are providing these speech therapy services to Medicaid children in the state of Georgia. Under the supervision of a full speech language pathologist, it would allow these individuals to receive Medicaid reimbursement just as a speech language pathologist. This passed out of the Health Committee unanimously.
Questions? Thank you. Ms. Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask for two bills this morning. The first one is on the first page, and it's the fifth bill from the bottom. It's HB 297. This is where the code section had the word native erroneously removed, and we just need to put it back because native azaleas are different from regular azaleas. Okay. The other bill, may I go ahead? The other bill is on the yellow sheet, and it's on the first page, and it's third from the bottom. It's House Bill 189. That bill would require that the Department of Natural Resources give governing authorities a 60-day notice before they close a state park or historic site. The department realizes that this would help them in helping the community improve or maintain their economy rather than having those parks closed.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
We did.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I come before you with House Bill 289. It's on the first page, 6 from the bottom. What this bill does is look to preserve the consumer protections as well as the legal certainty for our financial institutions that were originally intended through our state's Uniform Commercial Code and the Electronic Funds Transfer Act. However, this has been threatened by the passage of the Dodd-Frank legislation, so we're just looking to provide the certainty that was originally intended through those two pieces of legislation.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Wait a second. Come back. She's slow on the draw this morning. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kelly, can you speak to the concerns of conflict between the Dodd-Frank Act and the consumer protections that you're concerned?
Yes, ma'am. This defines a new legal regime for what is considered a remittance transfer, which is a transfer from a citizen in the United States, an international transfer. And because of the way it's defined in the Dodd-Frank legislation, an uncertainty exists because there would be no statutory rules for remittance transfers that may involve mistaken addresses or payees, as well as the duties of intermediaries and other issues beyond the initial sending of the transfer.
So with regards to the remittance transfers, is the concern that the remittance that's coming from the U.S. to another country could somehow be misplaced and the sender in the United States wouldn't have the remedy of going through the courts? Can you explain what the remittance transfer concern is? And I'm happy to talk to you about it offline, but I need clarification about what we're doing, because when you interfere with the remittance transfer language that's in the Dodd-Frank Act, I just want to make sure that we're not creating a remedy or a right within the state of Georgia that can't be preserved. some other way?
No, ma'am. What we're looking to do here is to say that we're restoring all the consumer protections originally intended in the Electronic Funds Transfer Act, and saying that should conflicts arise because of Dodd-Frank legislation, we're going to defer to those through the Electronic Funds Transfer Act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for quick clarification, this is a tweak recommended by the Uniform Law Commission for all the states to tweak Article 4 of the UCC to make sure we're all stay in compliance with each other, or uniformity with each other.
Do y'all want to know how involved y'all looked on that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You do that again, you're going back to Cedartown, boy. Madam Minority Leader, sure I'm glad you were reading up on that. Mr. Teasley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you House Bill 229. It's on the first page, about middle of the way down. It's requested by the Department of Insurance. Currently, insurance companies must submit a report to the department showing their volume and experience for specific lines of insurance written in Georgia. The department believes this is a redundancy. They're required to submit that on their annual report anyway, and these reports the department is keeping on file, and no one has ever requested them, so they're asking for this removal. Ask for your favorable consideration.
Any questions? Thank you. He's back. Mr. Atwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've never done this before, but I neglected, if I could have the chair's permission to ask for one bill due to time that's on the yellow sheet, House Bill 164. And essentially all this does, Mr. Chairman, is extend the current sales tax exemption on engine and parts and equipment and other tangible property for the maintenance of aircraft that are registered out of state from June 30th, 2013 to 2015. And I apologize, I meant to do that when I was up here.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, you got a question?
Oh, wait a second.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Rules Committee. I, too, am asking something off the yellow sheet to be moved to the consideration calendar. It's House Bill 475, which is on page 3, third from the bottom. Basically, this bill would seek to allow the Commissioner of Driver Services to negotiate and enter into driver's license reciprocity agreements with foreign nations as long as their safety standards are met. Surrounding states have done this. They have authority to do that. Alabama, Florida, and South Carolina do that. And it has become an economic development issue. So the Department of Economic Development is asking for this along with the Governor's office.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Golick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, you have on the desk before you an amendment, AM 29-2143. This relates to, excuse me?
2153.
2153, sorry. AM 29-2153. This relates to House Bill 349, which is on the floor this morning. An issue came up last night, literally, regarding the proposed expansion of the child hearsay exception as it relates to sexual abuse situations. The expansion itself is good. However, a member brought to our attention the possibility that the way it's worded may infringe upon or muddy the waters at the very least on the use of the child hearsay exception in the civil context, for example, in child deprivation cases. That is certainly not the intent of the bill, and it was just, frankly, it's an easy fix, but it's just too late to do given the fact that it was after hours last night. So out of an abundance of caution, what we're going to seek to do is just to strike that section, preserve current law, and then continue to work on the issue as it makes its way through the process. And I just would move on the amendment, Mr. Chairman, and ask for support.
Y'all have heard the amendment. Is there any questions? None. Okay, let's get this out of the way now. You've got amendment AM 292153. Mr. Golick has moved on it. Do I hear a second? Second. Any opposition? Okay, that will be, again, that's on today's bill. So there'll be a rules amendment on today's bill. What was it, Rich? 349? Yes, 349. All right. Okay. Members. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for two bills already presented today, one by Representative Nimmer, 279, and the other one by Hatchett, number 381. Thank you, sir.
Wait a second.
Two 279.
Where is it?
And 381.
I don't know what 279 is. Check that number.
Nimmer's was 276, sorry. I am partially awake.
Okay. Never mind. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that on the yellow sheet, page 2, House Bill 282, which is the broadband bill, ask for that. But I'd also specifically today like to ask for House Bill 393.
And 139. Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have three on the first page of the sheet. House Bill 215 deals with Clerk of Court's office. House Bill 245 deals with courses that can be taken for leadership training. House Bill 345 by teacher retirement is asking for clarification on the term teacher. And on the yellow sheet, House Bill 69 deals with protection for tax sale purchasers at redemption.
Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for HB 271, Representative Neal's bill. Tremendous amount of work's gone into this bill in the interim and this session, and has strong support from non-civil judiciary committee.
Mr.
270.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the second page, under modified structured rule, the very last bill, House Bill 146, this is a bill that would allow search warrants and arrest warrants to be issued by video conference, and this has very significant impact on local municipality, well, local counties where magistrate judges and superior court judges will be able to reduce the cost of transportation and things like that. Thank you.
Mr. Willard.
I'm jealous Mr. Benton's got more bills than I have. I'll wait. I'll win. I'm asking one bill, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 443. What we're doing here is changing the magistrate from an appointed position in Fulton County, which is the only one in the state, to an elected position. The reason it's on your general calendar is because it calls for, of course, as a judge election, a nonpartisan election.
Okay. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for House Bill 317. It's on the third page, about a third of the way down. It would allow the medical board to issue an administrative license and a special license for qualified physicians who want to come in and study at our universities for a brief period of time.
Ms. Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask for House Resolution 107, page 2. It's a joint study committee on Medicaid reform, 18 members, House and Senate, and the governor's office will make appointments. Also, I'd like to put my name and ask for House Bill 125, Representative Hightower's bill dealing with license renewals, and House Bill 131, Hope dual credit course.
Mr. Rice.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I might as well do the same thing. I got one on the yellow sheet, which is HB 250, which is a HB 386 implementation concern to allow the local excise tax between the energy provider and the dealer and the manufacturer to have a basis for being billed. Needs to go through this year.
Mr. Cassis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for House Bill 184. It's the first one on the third page. It's to allow private colleges and seminaries to operate by means of accreditation. It's House Bill 184.
Got it.
Also, furthermore, I'd like to request if it could be moved to a modified open rule from the modified structure rule.
Okay. Mr. Smyrie.
No, you don't.
Nope, nope. No, you don't.
451.
Please give me 451.
That's what I would do, but
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna strike this out, write it back down, strike it out, and write it back down. Which one you want me to do?
It's got a little riding partner, but we can go ahead and do it.
Okay. Mr. Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually, my bill is the writing partner on Mr. Smyre's bill, so I want to lend my support to that bill as well. I'm asking for House Bill 487 on page 3 under modified structure. It was passed unanimously out of the Regulated Industries Committee yesterday. It's the product of months of effort, an effort instituted by Governor Deal to finally put in place a regulatory system of Class B adult redemptions games that is actually effective and stops the proliferation of really what are tantamount to casinos all over our state under the guise of legal adult redemption games that is competing directly with our lottery and damaging hope. It's going to move the regulation of these machines from DOR to lottery. A group that has a built-in incentive to enforce the law is going to require the implementation of a monitoring system, a centralized monitoring system, and finally put in place a system that actually works, unlike the Band-Aids we've been putting on this in recent years, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we're going to the yellow sheet this morning, House Resolution 204, I'd like to request that, dealing with sequestration and urging Congress there. And I'd like to also ask for House Bill 482 that my chairman has presented this morning, Jay Neal.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, am going to go to the yellow sheet, House Bill 304, Freeport exemption, to clarify some language that has just recently been brought out as far as fertilizer here in the state.
Mr. Peak.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, ask for HB 350 on the third page. It's our national fingerprint background check for all employees and licensed daycare centers.
Mr. Powell. Ms. Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to again ask for H.R. 73, a compensation resolution for the wrongful conviction of Lathan Word. I'd also like to again ask for, on behalf of Representative Buckner, HB 297, having to do with the wildflower designation of native azaleas.
The Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for HB 150, the bill brought by Representative Roger Bruce, which would prohibit the practice of selling mugshot or forcing folks to pay for having their mugshots removed from private sites. And I'd also like to put my name beside HB 189, the bill offered by Representative Buckner, that would require that DNR notify small towns and counties before shutting down their tourist attractions, parks, and historical sites. 189 is on the yellow sheet.
Okay. Is Mr. Rice?
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. I just want to put my name beside HB 75, which is BJ Pack's bill, which is the reciprocity agreement on licenses. This is absolutely an economic development issue since the states around us are providing license on a reciprocal basis to other countries.
Anyone? Mr. Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put my name by House Bill 268 by Representative Harden, dealing with the agricultural products bonding, so we don't have some of the travesties that happened in this state last year to our agricultural community.
Ms. Drenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to put my name beside Representative Bruce's bill, House Bill 150, and ask for also that very complicated bill of Representative Buckner, House Bill 297.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for HB 207 to help with the Thanksgiving meal, Representative Shaw's bill.
My turkey hunting. Mr. Willard. Yeah.
Mr. Willard?
Since most of you people are not listening to me anyway, Mr. Willard, most of you are chairman of some committee of some sort, and to pay you back for what y'all just put me through the last 2 days letting all that stuff out, we're going to make Monday a good one. Bring dinner, boys and girls. All right. Starting under modified open, I'm just going to go down through them. HB 36. Any opposition? Zone. Modified open, HB 94. Any opposition? It's on. Modified open, HB 139. Any opposition? Modified open, HB 192. And Sharon, I'm assuming that thing is okay with whatever we're going to take off my foot. Okay. That's 192, it's on. Modified open, HB 207. Any opposition? Modified open, HB 219. Any opposition? So, okay.
That's the bill, Mr. Chairman. I spoke with Representative Brockway. It conflicts with what we did yesterday as far as our juvenile justice reform bill. There's that bill and Fleming's bill that I've talked to both about. They understand we're going to wait on those bills if we can and make the changes in the Senate that they're asking for. Because the language of it will be under the old code
So
as far as changes.
you're asking me to put this one off, is
Yes,
it?
sir, please.
Okay. All right, go back there and take HB 219, take it off. You did tell me that, and I forgot it. HB 229, any opposition? It's on. Modified open, HB 256, any opposition? It's on. Modified open, HB 268, any opposition? It's on. HB 271 under modified open. Any opposition? HB 297. Got a real tough bill there, Ms. Drenner. All right, it's on. Under modified open, HB 332. Any opposition? Under modified open, HB 337. That's not the other, that's not the Fleming, but that's, okay. Any opposition? It's on. Modified open, HB 345. Any opposition? Go to modified structure. Under modified structure, HB 45. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 124. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 125. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 131. Any opposition? Zone. Modified structure, HB 146. Any opposition? Okay. And I am pleased to report HB 199. Any opposition? Okay, modified structure, HB 296. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 310. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 317. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 350. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 354. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 361. Opposition. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, same sign. It's on. HB 362. Opposition. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Those opposed. It's on. Under modified structure, HB 365. Any opposed? It's on. Under structured, HB 34. Any opposition? That's 27 or 28. Is that enough? Wait a second. We're going to have, don't rush out. Mr. Golick.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Rule 33.3, I'm going to move that we limit debate on House Bills 361 and 362 to no more than 1 hour each, time to be allotted equally by the Speaker.
This is either a 6 o'clock get out or a 9:30. You've got the motion. All those, I need a second for the motion. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. It will be limited on those two bills, and the Speaker will use the time accordingly. Listen up. It's my understanding that we will be in at 10 o'clock on Monday. That's correct. So we will have rules at 9 o'clock on Monday. Ms. Cooper. Wait.